The pink smoke was still in the air when my wife left me. It drifted above the backyard in one fat cloud, sweet with cheap powder and baby shower stupidity. While 30 people screamed and clapped like money could make God stop embarrassing a family in public, I still had the confetti cannon in my hand. Elise had just laughed for the camera. Then she stepped away from me, wiped pink dust off her dress and said, clear as church bells, I'm leaving my husband. The cheering died so fast, it almost hurt my ears. My cousin dropped his beer. Somebody's mother whispered, Jesus Christ. My cousin dropped his beer. At the edge of the yard, the ring light we'd set up for the live stream kept glowing over the dessert table, making the cupcakes and champagne flutes look even faker than they already had. I stared at Elise. For one stupid second, I thought it was a joke. Some social media bit. One of those mean little reveal stunts she used to mock when she still had an influencer following. Then she reached into her purse, took out 3 printed screenshots and laid them on the cake stand like place cards. Since we're already sharing family news, she said, we might as well share the full update. I recognized my own messages before I could read them. Marla, my ex, nothing naked, nothing romantic, but too late at night, too private. Too easy to weaponize in a yard full of people who had come to eat brisket and watch us pretend our marriage was healthy. Elise, I said. She did not look at me. She looked at the guests. That was worse. I found out 2 months ago that Graham has been texting his ex behind my back. She picked up the top page. I also found out he's been hiding debt. My father-in-law, Hank Duval, folded his arms and stared into the lawn like he was watching a contractor miss a level. Not shocked, not angry, prepared. That was the first thing that turned the floor under me soft. If your wife blows up your life in public, one person is always supposed to look surprised, a parent, a sibling, somebody. Hank looked like a man waiting for a meeting to begin on time. That's not what this is, I said. Weak sentence, pathetic sentence. The kind men say right before a room decides they deserve what's happening to them. Elise laughed once, small and dry. No? She held up another page. Would you like to explain the line of credit first or the messages? At the folding chair row by the hydrangeas, my sister Tessa set her wine down on the grass and straightened. Tessa had spent the last 9 years turning ugly divorces into billable hours. When she looked at a family scene, she never saw emotions first. She saw evidence. That look was on her face now. Calculation distance. Not loyalty. Not yet. Hank stepped forward at last. My daughter is not going to raise a child inside a dishonest home. He said it like scripture. Not loud. Worse than loud, calm. It landed over the crowd and made everyone still. I wanted to say this wasn't a home. It was a performance space with matching napkins. I wanted to say the line of credit was temporary. That the mortgage office had a bad quarter, that Marla had texted me first, after her mother died, that every bad thing I had done was smaller than what was happening right now. Instead, I stood there holding a useless confetti cannon, while my wife put one hand over her stomach, and the other over the wreckage. I wanted tonight to be about our daughter, she said. But I am not bringing a girl into a marriage built on lies. The cruelty of it was almost elegant. Our daughter. My lies. Her exit. All wrapped inside a sentence made to play well on video. I knew that tone. I had paid for that tone. 7 years of brand deals, styled parties, curated apologies, tasteful rage. Elise never wasted a scene. That was when I understood the party had not gone wrong. The party was the weapon. People did not leave right away. That was the humiliating part. If there had been a fist fight, or a screaming match, or one decent act of low-class chaos, they could have fled and called it too much. Instead, they stayed. Because Americans love a family implosion when there's a charcuterie board nearby. Elise kept control of the yard with almost no effort. She stood near the cake table, while my aunt pretended to comfort her, and 3 other women pretended not to lean in close enough to hear everything. I stood by the grill island with Hank's golf buddies and 2 neighbors who suddenly found the patio stone fascinating. You should have told her yourself, one of them muttered without making eye contact. Told her what? He lifted one shoulder. Coward's shrug, meaning whatever she says you did. I picked up the screenshots from the cake stand. Marla had texted me first. I had answered too long. That much was true. One screenshot also showed a transfer confirmation from a business account into a personal card. Elise had printed that too, not enough to explain the whole debt, enough to make me look dirty. And dirty always beats complicated in a backyard jury. I found Elise near the kitchen doors. How long? She turned slowly. How long what? How long have you been planning this? Long enough. Good answer. Hateful answer. Her face was composed, but I knew her well enough to see the effort in it. Too much blush still on, lipstick fresh. She had reapplied after crying, or maybe before. On the counter behind her sat the white fertility clinic envelope that had arrived that morning. Opened already. I looked at it, then back at her. Why did you open my mail? That finally made her smile. You really want to start dividing property now? Hank appeared in the doorway before I could answer. He had the settled look of a man stepping into phase 2. Graham. Not now. Actually, yes. Now. He moved closer. You should stop making this uglier. I laughed. That laugh sounded cracked even to me. Ugly. Your daughter just left me at a gender reveal in front of half the county. And you're worried about ugly. His jaw flexed once. I'm worried about the child. There it was again. Not Elise, not us. The child, always the child, as asset, as legacy, as real estate with eyelashes. I pointed at the envelope. What was in there? Medical paperwork. And nothing you need to worry about tonight. That answer was so neat it lit something cold in me. Elise had come at me with receipts. Hank had come with timing. And that envelope had been opened before I touched it. Tonight was not one revelation. It was a sequence. I looked around the kitchen. The counters were crowded with pink frosted cookies and catered shrimp. Nobody was eating anymore. The women at the island had gone silent, but none of them had gone home. Outside. The live stream ring light still faced the yard. Still recording, maybe. Still useful. Tessa came through the side door and caught my eye. She barely moved her mouth. Back, hall now. I followed her without asking permission from anyone. At that point, permission had clearly gone out of style. Tessa shut the mudroom door behind us and held up the fertility envelope. This was steamed open. What? Not torn, not slit, steamed. She tapped the flap. And the clinic date doesn't match the portal screenshot Elise showed me last week. I stared at her. Slow down. I'm trying. She pulled out 2 pages. One was a standard follow-up note from Dr. Shaw's office. The other was a billing summary. Tessa pointed the transfer date. This says the embryo transfer happened on the 3rd. Elise told the family it was the 15th. You sure? I can still count, Graham. The room seemed to tilt. The 3rd and the 15th were not small calendar drift. They were a full lie. Why would she change the date? Tessa looked at me for a second too long. That was how I knew she had another piece she hated. Last month, Hank asked me to look over trust language. Casually. As if it was some future grandchild planning thing. He kept circling biological issue language. I told him to call a proper estates lawyer. He said he already had one. He just wanted a family opinion. I felt the sweat go cold under my collar. Biological issue. Meaning if the trust is old money and ugly enough, it means blood. Or whatever the lawyers can make blood mean. For the first time that night, the messages to Marla fell away. The debt fell away. Even the public humiliation shifted to the edge of the picture. The center moved. The center was the pregnancy. You think this is about the baby? Tessa folded the pages back into the envelope. I think the baby is the only thing Hank has cared about all night. I think your texting scandal is useful but not central. And I think Elise picked tonight because once a woman leaves a dishonest man in public, nobody wants to hear him start asking fertility questions after. That was so cruelly plausible it made me sick. I leaned back against the washer. No. No what? No. She wouldn't. Tessa gave me a look only siblings can give. The one that says I know exactly how stupid you are because we were raised in the same house. She absolutely would. The only real question is whether she did it alone. Outside. Somebody dragged folding chairs across the patio. The sound scraped through the wall like metal teeth. I thought about Hank asking me last month if I had updated my life insurance. About Elise insisting we do the reveal this weekend, instead of waiting for a quieter family dinner. About how carefully she had angled her body toward the ring light before she dropped the first screenshot. This had not been a wife finally reaching a breaking point. Breaking points are sloppy. Tonight had lighting. What do we do? I asked. Tessa's mouth tightened. First, you stop talking to guests. Second, you do not threaten anybody in writing. Third, if I can get Dr. Shaw on the phone, I need answers before the yard empties and the story locks. The story already locked. Not legally. That was Tessa. She never promised hope, only paperwork. She took out her phone. Buy me 15 minutes. Doing what? Try not to burn the rest of your life down before I know which parts are already on fire. Hank had converted his home office into something between a study and a command center for local Republican donors. Leather chairs, oil painting of cattle, bronze longhorn on the shelf. Enough American masculinity in one room to choke a horse. He waved me in after most of the older guests had drifted toward the front drive. Sit down. I'm fine standing. Suit yourself. He did not offer whiskey. That was how I knew this was not family. This was business. He slid a slim binder across the desk. What is this? A path to keep things civilized. Inside was a temporary agreement, housing, asset restraint, public statements, and one paragraph that made the back of my neck tighten. Pending clarification of biological standing and final trust administration, Graham Mercer acknowledges no independent claim over Duval family instruments established for the benefit of the child. I read it twice. Biological standing. Hank folded his hands. Standard caution. No, it isn't. For families with significant holdings, it is. I looked up. What exactly are you saying? I'm saying my daughter is leaving you. I'm saying there will be a child. And I'm saying my job is to protect the child from instability. Meaning me. Meaning debt, poor judgment, infidelity, adjacent conduct, and future litigation risk. The neatness of it nearly made me admire him. He had taken every weakness I actually had and stacked them in front of a much bigger secret like sandbags. If I tried to push through, I would have to do it carrying all my own ugliness first. Was the down payment a loan too? I asked. The house? The fertility round? Were those gifts, Hank, or were you just buying better timing for this night? His eyes hardened. Nothing in adult life is a gift. Then say it plain. Fine. He leaned forward. The house happened because my daughter was marrying a man who needed stature. The IVF happened because your marriage needed a child faster than it needed honesty. And tonight is happening because Elise finally chose survival over embarrassment. That survival language in there doesn't sound much like hers. Daughters do not need to draft the documents fathers pay to prepare. There it was. The ugliest thing said simply. He had not just approved the destruction. He had funded it. You planned this. I prepared for it. Before tonight, long before tonight, I wanted to hit him. Instead, I closed the binder and set it down carefully. When your entire life is one bad camera angle from criminal charges, self-control becomes less noble and more practical. I'm not signing this. Then don't. He stood. But if you refuse to handle this quietly, understand something. The debt is in your name. The line of credit is in your name. Your office trouble is in your name. The public sympathy is with my daughter. And whatever else you think you know, you don't control how it will sound. That last part stuck. Not what I know, how it will sound. He was right, and he knew he was right. Truth was not the product tonight. Narrative was. Tessa got Dr. Shaw on the phone at 9:14. I remember the exact minute because by then I had become the kind of man who noticed timestamps the way drowning men notice air. She put the call on speaker in the laundry room with the dryer, humming like an anxious witness. I can't discuss patient details freely, Dr. Shaw said. You're already discussing enough, Tessa answered. We have inconsistent paperwork and a trust dispute forming in real time. He exhaled. I can confirm there was a schedule adjustment after a male factor viability issue. I felt my stomach fall. Meaning me? Silence. Professional silence. Which in that moment meant yes. Tessa pressed on. Was a donor authorization executed? A donor contingency file was activated. Signed by whom? By the patient. Elise. Not me. Was the husband informed? Another silence. That is not reflected in the copy I can currently see. Tessa closed her eyes. Doctor, is there any world in which Graham's biological connection is confirmed by the paperwork currently in hand? Not by the packet you described. Thank you. She ended the call before he could retreat into policy language. For a moment neither of us spoke. The dryer kept thumping. Somewhere outside a car door slammed. Say it, I told her. The kid may not be yours biologically. May. Not. Tessa spoke carefully because she knew the difference mattered to courts and almost never mattered to feelings. Yes. And Hank knew enough to lawyer around it. And Elise knew enough to choose tonight. I sat down on the closed washer. The machine creaked under my weight. I thought of the sonogram pictures on our fridge, the tiny socks on the registry. The way Elise had cried during the first round, when the hormones wrecked her sleep, and I had actually believed pain meant honesty. Then why tell everyone I'm a liar over Marla? Because you were. Tessa's voice stayed flat. Not in the biggest way in the room. But enough. Enough to make her exit clean. Enough to make you look guilty before you started asking dangerous questions. That was the part that gutted me. Not that I had done wrong, I had. Not that Elise had found a use for it. Of course she had. It was that my worst qualities had made the perfect curtain for hers. If you build your life around appearances, one day appearances get used against you by someone better at them. She used me as cover, yes. And now? Now you need her to say too much. Can you prove any of this? Not from here. Not tonight. Then what good is it? Tessa crouched in front of me. Her face softened for the first time. Because now you know what actually happened. That matters. Maybe not to the yard. Maybe not to Hank. But it matters if you want to survive the next part without handing them more rope. I laughed once. There was no humor in it. Survive. That's where we are? That's where you've been for a while, she said. Tonight just turned the lights on. I found Elise upstairs in the nursery we had spent 6 weekends pretending to build together. Half the wallpaper still smelled like paste. A cream glider sat under the window. The ring light from downstairs had been dragged up and leaned in the corner, still glowing. Her mascara had smudged at the edges. She was wiping foundation off the shoulder of her dress with a baby wipe. Nothing about her looked shattered. Resistet, maybe. Never shattered. Did you know? I asked. About what? Don't do that. About the donor file. Her hand stopped moving. Then continued. Tessa moves fast. So do you, apparently. She dropped the wipe into the diaper pail. What do you want, Graham? The truth. No, you want the version of the truth that keeps you central. Try me. She faced me fully then. The performance voice was gone. What replaced it was quieter and much worse. I chose tonight because tonight gives me witnesses. Tonight gives me sympathy. Tonight gives me a clean story before you have time to muddy it. And yes, if I had left quietly, you would eventually have started counting dates and invoices and trust language. You know me. I do. Then why stay married to me at all? That made her smile, but sadly this time, because for years, despite everything, you were still useful. Useful? You were handsome in photos. You were tolerable at donor dinners. You wanted a family badly enough to play husband even when the money was ugly. And when the first IVF rounds failed, I still thought maybe we could drag this thing over the finish line. With somebody else's sperm? With a baby, she said. Don't flatten everything into biology because it's the only part you can point to and say you were robbed. That line hit because it was close to true. You were going to let me raise a child you knew wasn't mine. You were going to be the legal father. If you had behaved, maybe that would have been enough for everyone. Behaved. You hid debt. You texted Marla. You lied whenever it was more convenient than telling me you were scared. So don't stand there acting like I wrecked a holy marriage. I dismantled a failing enterprise before it buried me too. I took a step toward her. Then why the ring light? Why the crowd? Why the pink smoke and the cupcakes and the speeches? Because public memory is efficient, she said. A woman leaves her dishonest husband at a gender reveal, and people know exactly who to root for. A woman leaves quietly and then the husband gets 2 weeks to reinvent himself. I wasn't interested in giving you 2 weeks. There it was. No tears, no apology, not even denial, only strategy. Did your father write the script? He helped with the order. And the trust? Was always going to protect the baby first. The baby, I said. Not me. She lifted one shoulder. You noticed. I made the mistake of going back outside, not because I thought I could win. Some part of me already knew the night had tilted too far. But when a man has just learned his marriage was detonated for optics and financial positioning, self-preservation starts to look a lot like noise. The yard was half empty now, which somehow made it meaner. The people who stayed were the ones who intended to carry the story into Monday. Hank stood by the fire pit with 2 neighbors and our pastor. Elise came down behind me 1 minute later, slower, eyes red now. One hand on the railing, transformed back into the woman from the livestream clip. Tessa hissed from the patio door, "Don't do this here." I ignored her. That was my second mistake. "Ask them," I said, loud enough to turn heads. "Ask Hank what biological standing means in the trust binder." Conversation stopped. Hank did not even blink. "Graham, go inside. Ask him why the clinic dates don't match. Ask Elise why she needed to leave tonight," before I had time to read the actual paperwork. The pastor looked pained. The neighbors looked thrilled in the guilty way people get when morality and gossip overlap. Hank set down his glass. "My son-in-law is upset." "Your son-in-law?" I barked out. "You just offered me a settlement, because you have created instability." I turned to Elise. Tell them about the donor authorization." Elise's mouth parted. For one wild second I thought she might panic. Instead she did something smarter, she cried. Not hard, not messy. Just enough. The sound came out small and wounded. "I can't do this," she said. "I cannot stand here and have him twist our private medical pain into one more attack because he got caught." The crowd shifted instantly. Not in my favor, never in my favor. Women stepped toward her. Men stepped away from me. Hank moved in front of his daughter with almost graceful timing. "That's enough." "No," I said, "it isn't enough. You knew. All of you knew some part of this. You rewrote dates. You rewrote trust language. You rewrote the whole story before the party even started." Tessa finally came outside. Graham warning in one word. I turned on her too fast. "Tell them." She held my gaze. Then gave the only answer a lawyer could give in a yard full of neighbors, phones, and protected medical records. "Not here." And that was the end. Because truth with an asterisk loses to tears every time. Hank spread his hands slightly. Not triumphant, just patient, like a man disappointed by a contractor, a politician, a weak son-in-law. There are complicated fertility matters in every family. What I see tonight is a husband caught in lies, trying to lash out at my daughter after she found the strength to leave. The pastor nodded once. One of the neighbors put an arm around Elise. I watched the crowd choose its version. Not because it was more accurate, because it was easier. Cheating husband, pregnant wife, protective father. Falling apart man starts muttering about paperwork and bloodlines. The script wrote itself. And the one unbearable thing was that I had handed them half of it with my own stupid hands. Marla Dept, late night lies. I had built the opening argument for the people burying me. By the time I understood that, the room, if a backyard can be called a room, was gone, not physically, narratively. I could still stand in it, I just no longer had the right to define what had happened there. Elise left after midnight, not dramatically. No second speech. No final slap. That would have been too obvious. She came downstairs in jeans and a cashmere sweater with one overnight bag and the slim document case from Hank's office. Her makeup was clean. Her face had settled. She looked like a woman leaving a hotel after a disappointing conference. Hank followed her out with the calm of a man who had already transferred the important things. On the kitchen island, my cards had started bouncing. Tessa checked one of the banking apps and swore under her breath, joint accounts frozen. That fast, they were ready. Of course they were. The trust binder was gone. The clinic envelope was gone. The house, however, remained. So did the line of credit. So did the mortgage mess. So did the stain. At the front door, Elise paused. I was standing by the hallway table under the framed black and white wedding photo she had once insisted looked editorial. "Was any of it real?" I asked. She considered that. Parts of it were useful for longer than others. Then she opened the door. Not cruelly, not kindly, just efficiently. Pink confetti still clung to the front walk. Hank's car idled behind hers. Neither of them looked back after they pulled out. The house went so quiet I could hear the ice machine refill in the freezer. Tessa picked up the spare confetti cannon from under the entry bench and stared at it. "You want the good news?" I laughed without meaning to. "There's good news? You can fight. Later. Not tonight. Not from this hole." She set the cannon in the trash. "Get some sleep before you decide to text anybody, post anything, or confess to anything you don't legally need to confess to. I'm serious, Graham. This kind of night makes men stupid in permanent ways." Then she left too. She kissed my cheek first. That was how I knew just how bad I looked. I walked through the house alone. The nursery upstairs still held the ring light. The backyard still looked like a cheap fairy tale after a shooting. Pink paper circles were stuck in the grass, the hedges, the deck cracks, the edge of the pool. The reveal cannon I had fired sat on its side near the hydrangeas. Its twin, unopened, leaned against the trash can. Boy and girl, one used, one wasted. I stood there longer than I needed to, long enough to understand something ugly and clean. Elise had not merely left me. She had built the exact version of events that made leaving me look righteous. And America loves that man. The polished suburban husband with money trouble. The wife who finally finds her backbone in public. The father-in-law who protects his pregnant daughter. That story moves. That story sticks. That story does not pause for fertility law or donor forms or who knew what when. It just stamps a man with the shape of his worst behavior and calls the rest details. I looked at the pink confetti caught in the wet grass. It was everywhere. In the dark, it looked almost tender. By morning, it would look cheap. By next week, it would be rot. I was still wearing the same blue blazer from the party. Powder from the cannon had settled into the sleeve. I brushed at it once and stopped. There was no point. You can't dust off the version of yourself a crowd has already accepted. All you can do is stand in the backyard, after your wife leaves you at your own baby party, and learn, very late, that truth and victory are not even cousins.